Hey guys, I hope this finds you well. You're enjoying your day. We are going to cover 6.5 today, and this is going to be a very juicy standard. We're going to look at models. That's pretty much it for cities, internal structure, and how they're set up. So we're going to look at North American models first, and then we're going to look at other world models. So if you do not have this template, I apologize. It's a bit convoluted, but we're going to cover four different models in the North American. So you need to know the year, the definition, draw a quick visual. It does not need to be detailed. And then we'll quickly talk about some limitations, positives or negatives. And then on other world models, we'll look at Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Africa. And for those, you'll just need a quick description, visual, and just some key characteristics. All right, so if you need to pause the video to set those notes up, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to jump over to the PowerPoint and we're going to dig in. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be looking at the internal structure and we're going to be studying some models. So we are going to start with North America, and we have four specific models we're going to look at. But we want to keep in mind that which is why I want you to put the years of these models, is our cities don't look like they did 100 years ago or even 20 years ago. But I do want you to be familiar with some of these patterns. And so we're going to go ahead and examine how land is used and how it's kind of divvied up, and even look at some socioeconomic differences in some of these zones. So let's revisit a really important concept, the bid-rent theory we learned about in the agricultural unit. It's all about location, you guys. So what are you willing to pay to be in the right location? So remember that we have our central business district right here. And then the further out you get from that central business district, generally the less amount of cost you're going to have for that land. Okay. And so when we look at some of these zones that you're going to see in a city, we're going to look at commercial first zone is going to be closest to central business district. And then you're going to have usually your industry and sector in your second zone, and then residential area where you have apartment buildings and even single family homes. And then last is going to be that fourth zone of agriculture. Okay. Now, our first model is called concentric. And I want you to list that this is based on the city of Chicago, and it was developed in the 1920s by Ernest Burgess, who looks at the relationship between the socioeconomic status of households and distances from the central business district, and where people can afford to live in relationship to where they work. Interesting, right? Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into this. The zone of transition is going to be right here, and then you have your working class zone, and then you're going to have your residential zone, and then your commuter zone. Okay. So the problem with this model is that it is very outdated, right? It was designed in the 1920s, and one thing that has really changed since the 1920s, guys, is transportation, right? And another thing is that it is only applicable to American cities, because the inner city is generally where we used to see low income, where we have suburbs have become more wealthier. And the opposite is the norm in other parts of the world. It is not set up where you have the suburbs represent your wealthier population. And last is urban renewal and gentrification. We haven't talked about gentrification yet, but gentrification is where you see these really rundown areas and really like even poverty-stricken areas in a city. People come in, like developers come in with a lot of money, and they rebuild these areas, and then they resell them at a very high price. And so these become very, very expensive properties. This is a new thing, a more recent, that's happening, and you're not going to see that in a model like the concentric zone. All right, those are our weaknesses or limitations in the concentric model. Now let's look at the Hoyt sector model. This was developed by Homer Hoyt, who actually took the concentric model and modified it a little bit, and it was designed in 1939. Okay, and some of his main premises was that cities develop in more of a series of wedge-like sectors that you can see here, and they are not rings. They're actually going to represent like a slices of pie as opposite to a series of circles. And then it's really important to note in this model that the central business district has these sectors or slices of pie that are going to follow our major transportation routes, and they're going to radiate out from that central business district. And we're going to look deeper into an example here, but generally these sectors are going to go along like a railroad or even streetcars or main highways. So again, you're going to see different socioeconomic groups that move outward from the city along these transportation routes. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit deeper. So we generally have, this is a Hoyt sector model. You can see really clearly this is going to be our central business district. And what we start to see is one of those sectors branch out. And guess what, guys? It's right beside, it's developed along a major highway system. Okay. What we see, again, our central business district, and then this sector is going to develop, and it's going to have your industry sector down here at the bottom. Now you're going to see this area is going to be where your wealthy pops up. The wealthy residential areas are going to be as far away from those industry sectors as possible. Okay. And then you start to see more of a middle class areas pop up. They're going to be a little bit further away from central business district, but still away from the industry. And then you're going to have more of your lower class residential areas be, again, even further from central business district, and again, closer to that industry sector. Okay. And so when we look at this and we pull out, we can see, even though this looks like a circle concentric, remember this is going to be more pie-shaped with those slithers of different zones. Now let's look at some of the limitations or weaknesses with the Hoyt sector. Again, it's outdated. It's based on an early 20th century railroad transportation system. So today, the problem with that is cars allow us to, this model didn't allow for commuting, which we have today. And then people can commute, they can go out of the city with their cars and buy cheaper land and drive into work every day. Today, the traditional central business district has become way less important. So remember in Standard 6.2 when we talked about edge cities and how we don't have to always travel to the middle of the city or a main hub to get what we need for services and products anymore, because our suburbs are building up so much. All right, moving on to our next two North American city models. We're going to look at the multi-nuclei model. This looks like something you'd see in a science class, right? I don't know. Anyway, this is developed in 1945, and the thing that really changed with this model is transportation is going to play more of a role here. People are going to have greater movement in this model because at this time people are going to start to own cars, and there are now multiple central business districts. So that's what these black dots are representing, and the original is still going to exist though. So let's look at this. So original central business district, say, is going to be here, but you also have these other business districts develop. Okay, even here you're going to have an outlying business district and even some industrial suburbs. So if we look at this, you can see all the different nodes that are developing around, and this is going to incorporate industry, it's going to incorporate central business districts and even residential areas, and within those residential areas you're going to be seeing high, middle, and low class. Let's take a little bit closer look at this multi-nuclei. So remember in Standard 6.2 when we talked about edge cities, you're going to see some of these same kind of characteristics. So in each of these nodes, what you're going to see is maybe a specific service be available with these. If this is our central business district, that's the original one. We might have another node that has a airport around it. And you have to think about what kinds of services and products might develop around the airport, maybe restaurants, maybe hotels. What if this is a business park, right, where you have a lot of office buildings? What would develop around there as well? And look at this one. This is a college or university. Maybe you have bookstores develop around it, or even a lot of coffee shops that students would like to go study. And then a medical node. Okay, so all these different like little nuclei or nodes, so to speak, are going to have kind of a specialty service there. Okay. All right, let's jump into our last model for North America, and this is called the Galactic City, just like the planets. It's also called a peripheral model. This is developed in the 1960s, so you're going to kind of imagine this, just like it sounds, galactic, is the sun being in the middle and the planets revolving around that. It's based on the post-industrial city. That's characteristic that you might want to note. And it's also we're going to have definitely cars in this model as being our main method of transportation. So people have really started to move out of the cities with this and move into the suburbs. You're also going to see a representation of highways and beltways being built on this that provide access to the original central business district. And in this one, you're going to see a lot of edge cities. Okay. Whoops, I went too far. Let me back up. All right. So we look at this and we see some familiarity here of these supposed edge cities that are developing around these like beltways and different thoroughways for cars. Okay. So if we look at how these used to be planets, we see that we can fill all these in with like our central business district in the middle. We have suburban residential areas. We have light industrial parks. We have office buildings. We have hospital nodes or even colleges, college campuses or universities. We even have those retail centers and malls. And we even have a transportation hub that could include an airport. Okay, so again, that is going to be your galactic city model. And things that we need to take away here, guys, are that all these are theories, right? These are just models and that just help us understand how cities evolve. None of them are going to be perfect, but we do try to use these models to make sense of how housing, transportation, and businesses are using land patterns. And as times change, we're going to see these models change because they're going to be based on different things, including not just transportation, but technology and even our industry. All right, let's dive into our other world cities. So let's first look at Latin America. So on your notes, you need to have just a quick description. Guys, don't get carried away with this. And then try to do like a little visual. And then just as some key characteristics, if you hear some, jot those down. All right, so this is early Latin American cities. And because many Latin American cities were conquered by the Spanish, you are definitely going to see some of those characteristics in this model that are going to have Spanish influence. So this is definitely going to represent colonial times. That's really important that you know that. So the big takeaway with this model is going to be that, and I hope you guys can see this, it's going to represent the concentric and the Hoyt model that we saw in the Latin America city. It's almost going to be a hybrid of both. So remember, we see those circular zones, but we also see those slithered sectors like a piece of a pie here as well. All right, and you guys do not need to know all these, but some key characteristics maybe you want to list in your notes as that you are going to have a central business district in the middle, and then you have this spine that leads up to the mall. You're going to have your high class elite that is going to be really close to that spine that leads up to the central business district. On the outskirts, you're going to have those industrial areas, and then you might even have a market that is going to show the zone of maturity, where you're going to have a lot of old architecture. Then you're going to have your area of gentrification and even a mix of middle and low class housing that's going to be a little bit further from central business district. And then you're going to have really extreme low income. And what we see in a Latin America model, move my box out of the way, as we even see these squatter settlements in the very outskirts of towns. We have seen some pictures of this in our previous standards of like favelas and such. Okay, this is where you just have makeshift cities of people just putting together whatever, almost like a tent city that you would see in a city today. All right, that is Latin America. Now let's look at the Southeast Asia model. This is like the Latin America model. It's going to resemble a combination of both the concentric and the sector model. We'll look at it in just a minute. It's going to have a port as its center. There's not going to be a central business district, but may have components of a central business district. So you have your commercial, Western commercial zone that is again going to reflect where trade was done with the Europeans or even Western merchants. You're also going to have a commercial zone that might include your Chinese merchants. You're going to have government zones. You're going to have your high class residential zones and even newer suburbs. You can see those mixed with those squatter settlements. And of course, on the very outskirts, you're going to see agriculture industry. So let's look at this really quick. Okay, remember your central business district is not going to be what we've seen in the past. It's actually going to be a port. And so this is going to be designed for mostly trading. So you have your commercial zone here and your government zones here, high-class residential zones here. Your squatter settlements are going to be on the outskirts. You're going to see your agriculture and industry back here beyond your squatter settlements, and even your alien commercial zones through here, right above. So there's good access to the port there. All right, we're here at our last model, you guys. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It's going to be the Sub-Saharan African city model, which means it is going to be located below the Sahara Desert. And this is the big influencer here is going to be, it is going to be based on colonial era as well. You'll see that as we talk about it. So this is kind of interesting because it does represent a concentric model, but you kind of have three different things going on in that central business district. So you do have in that orange, kind of yellow, your traditional central business district, but yet because this is based on colonial times, in that purple area is where you see more of a grid-like system and fancier infrastructure there because that's going to be European influence. And then this back brown area is going to be your open markets. Now, when we get away from this kind of central hub, we're going to see neighborhoods. We're going to see a mix of neighborhoods that are going to be ethnic and even Europeans. But when we get even further away in that last zone, we're really going to see a lot of informal settlements and even some shanty towns. So let's look at this at a different angle, and then you can write some things in your notes. Again, this is based on sub-Saharan cities. It was influenced by European colonizers. So you basically see three central business districts. Remember, the first one is your traditional. So you're going to have vendors, lots of winding sidewalks, and only one-story buildings. But when you see, remember that was the purple area where you have European colonizer built. These are going to be more like blocks and street grid patterns, and you're going to have multi-story buildings here. Then that last area is going to be your open market area. Okay, and then we're going to see that infrastructure start to come out, and then you have your surrounding divided neighborhoods. And again, remember, in the outermost zone, you're going to see those squatter developments or shanty towns located on those outskirts of the city. All right, guys, that is it. Thanks for hanging in there with me. That concludes 6.5. Make sure you bring these in when I see you on Thursday to get your points. Enjoy the rest of your time.